Hello and welcome. If you remember from the last lecture, we had talked about how the cognition, which is considered more or less as thinking, but it is much more, develops in the perspective of the biology, the psychology, and in the perspective of the cultural foundations and the influence of culture. And we ended at a question about why, if so much has gone into the human mind and thought, so much of art, religion, philosophy and self motivation, we still tend to appear the same. For example, human history appears to be more of a record of a discord, as Gandhi used to say. War seems to have shaped our civilization, the wars seem to have shaped our geography and the trade, and when there are no wars, then people fight within the nation, and if there is no fight within the nation, then the state. And so it seems, and if nobody is fighting with any self, the man probably seems to be fighting oneself. Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, used to say that democracy is a state of mitigated war. So, you always need an enemy. If the enemy is not on the border, there is a shadow enemy within. So, is it the need of the mind? Is it the culture, the socio-politics which has developed the mind, or is it the mind which has, or the brain which has developed like this, that it continuously needs to have an adversary and keep in conflict? Why I am saying this is because in spite of all the knowledge, in spite of all the thinking which has developed, and in spite of whatever self-help and motivational and religious stuff we were talking about last time, people still seem to have a lot of trouble within. I mean, the happiness somehow seems to elude on a longer basis, and the proof is that WHO claims that the high rise in depression and anxiety and psychiatric illnesses, one reason could be that there is a better diagnosis, there could be in absolute numbers, the numbers may be many more, but the discomfort, you pick up a newspaper or open a news channel and you know the amount of discomfort people are living in. Why is it so? My guess is, and this is what we are all boiling down to after the neurosciences research and the fresh angles of thinking which have emerged in the last 20-30 years, is that probably maybe we are missing out something, maybe we are not able to place the whole blocks together, which we are still not able to do. But let us try to discover what possibly it could be. So, let us start from here. Whatever has gone into our heads, and you are grown up now and your cognition is developed, at a given point of time you do not have a individual, you have a self with which you are obviously moving in the world, and that self is interacting with your work, your relationships, your whole lot of what you call life. But at the minimum, even your self has multiple parts or multiple identities of itself, and this is what I call a 3 in 1. What actually I am, what I think I am, and what people think I am, and all these three interact with each other. What is me is often defined by what people think I am, and that is how the social communication and social continuity remains. Maybe the mirror neurons help into this, but I also have an image of myself. This image of myself acts on the society acts on what I am. So, amidst this the life goes on. Now, people can alter any of this, they obviously can alter this, what people think I am, through altering what I am and what I think I am. And this is what we will be probably discussing as we go on. But coming back to the original question, why is it that what we think at a collective or an individual level does not happen, but what spoils the show? Just try to match these words, they are not put in any order. See if you can match this. We all know this, we know danger, we know exploration, we know escape or fight, what we call flight or fight, acceptance, loss, attraction. Actually, if you try to look at it, the loss can be connected to acceptance, danger can be connected to escape or fight, exploration can be connected to attraction, danger can also be connected to attraction, like we talked about the dopamine surge which pushes you to explore and gain more experience and learn and move on, so on and so forth. This, but do we know this? Do we do this consciously? Does it happen that we can decide that okay fine, there is a danger, let me think, and or you just react? Loss, maybe you can train your mind, you can train your mind to accept this. Attraction, again, it seems to be out of control. But what is the commonality when you are talking about all this? The commonality is the invisible hidden factor with which we are all aware, and this are the invisible factor. Fear. Fear lets us choose, we are going to fight or escape. Grief, the acceptance is grief, and this is joy, the reward. We talked about dopamine surge, the reward, the feeling of pleasure. And so, what are these fear, joy and grief? These are emotions. So, we all know this word, we all think we are emotional, sometimes overly emotional, sometimes emotional out of the place, but emotions are the invisible power which actually play the real game. And in the psychology, in the whole history of human mind, we have always felt we are emotions, we always live by emotions, but when we have talked about training the mind or controlling the mind, or even we have tried to give models of explanation of mind, we have always somehow ignored emotion. The cognitive psychology thinks that it is a thought which works. Freud talked of emotion, but he gave a different explanation. So, what are these emotions? Do we know them? How emotional are you feeling when you are watching this? Or maybe if you just close your eyes, and I have asked you too many times to close your eyes and think, and I will keep doing that. And just for an instance, look at what is the emotion which you are feeling right now. Do you have a thought behind it? After all, happiness, sadness, grief, anger, we all experience this day in and day out. But are these words, or your anger means different to you and my anger means different to me? Is my happiness the same as your happiness, or your happiness, even in the given situation with the same stimulus, are two people feeling happy in the same way? So, let us look at it. We have talked about cognition, now let us talk about emotion and try to build up further to what the original title of this talk of the lecture series is, cognition, emotion and transformation. So, let us see if we can place together by the end of next 3-4 lectures and see what utility all these things, understanding, I mean they are always there whether you understand or you do not understand, you still are a cognitive animal, you still have a emotion, you are still brought up in society, but what is it all about? What is the value of all this? Is it just to train you to earn your bread and butter and move on into the directions given by somebody else, or is it something more? That is a issue of further discussion. So, what are emotions? Emotions are distinct mental states. So, you know, fear and happiness, anger, lust, play. Play is also considered to be a primary emotion. We all are aware of this. So, happiness, sad, anger, fear, disgust, surprise, shame. So, this is one level of emotion which are primary emotion. There are higher complex emotions like sacrifice, altruism, love, guilt, shame. There are so many of them which would not fall into the category of primary emotions, but you can call it secondary or you can call it higher complex emotions, because these emotions also have lot of conditioning onto it, the social conditioning, the way your brain networks have grown under your cultural influence, and they also have some amount of reflection of thought associated with it. This is just to show a list of the way basic emotions have been looked. More or less, it's a common thing. Some people have added love, some people have not added, and as I said, shame, love, all emotions are there, but whether they are primary emotions or set of complex emotion is a matter of what theory and what angle you look at it. But what happens, what does it mean to be emotional? What does it mean to feel happy? What does it mean to feel sad? And whether your thought process is affected by your emotion. Let us look at it. This is just a broad thing. There is a stimulus, say somebody praises you. So, there is a basic template of emotion, and why there is a basic template is because even if you go to animals, especially mammals, they all seem to exhibit some amount of emotion. We know dogs can laugh or they can smile and horses can cry, and the same emotion. And if you come to human beings and cut across all type of cultures and in whatever stage of modernization or evolution they are, obviously they are in the same state of evolution, but modernization and the cultural influences, the expression of emotion remains the same. Smile is a smile, cry is a cry, anger is a anger, and that is how we talked about the mirror neurons last time, and that is how there is a common thread between all the human minds. So, in one way, if you look at it at the basis, absolutely basics of how the brain developed, it was the movement and the motor brain which developed first, and then the emotional brain, and then obviously the neocortex, which is the thinking brain, came last. So, the emotions remain the same. So, you get an affective stimulus, there is a affect is about the emotional state, mood is more or less more sustained, affect is maybe in a short time. So, there is a stimulus. So, your mood may not change with the affective stimulus, but your affect may change. And then there is a basic program of all these emotions. There are rules by which it explains, and then your face displays it. You know, there is a smile, and there is a certain facial muscles. So, it is so fine tuned from the brain, in probably evolution has brought it, that with a certain stimulus and with a certain turning of a certain brain structure, which we will talk about, a program is almost set in, which will lead to certain facial contortions of muscles. And even when you are looking at it, your mind, your mirror neurons or some other part of the brain actually looks at that facial display of muscle, which underlying has a basic program for emotion. You perceive it in the same way, and you also feel the same emotion. So, when you see a happy person, you tend to feel happy unless you have decided not to be, and that is what cinema and theatre works on. They will create a scenario which is totally fictional, is just a play of light and dark, so acted out by somebody, and when the lights are switched off, you are sitting and watching a cinema, you tend to cry and laugh with the people. Actually what is happening is that those emotions which are being thrown off, your mind is catching, and say it happens like you see a child who is absolutely naive and raw and has no intentions in expressing his or her emotions, you catch it, your mind catches it, and without questioning you start feeling happy. When people die, not everybody who is present there is equally close, but it is the grief, that grief in the air, the grief of one person is shared. In that sense, the whole humanity seems to be united. So, all the differences may appear superficial, deeply it just continues. These are some of the theories which you will get in any textbook to read. One of the good textbooks to read this is Introduction to Psychology by Morgan King. So, I will just write the name, you can note it down. Morgan and King is a basic textbook, and I suggest you go and read this whenever you get time. So, these are just theories depending on the way they have approached. So, what are the difference? The differences are that there is a sensory stimulus like somebody's face, a stimulus is seen by the eye. Here is where they differ. They say that first what happens after it sees the eyes, there is a emotional expression, it is like a response from within, and that emotional expression gives rise to the perceiving of it and labeling of it. So, you can see it here, there is a shark, I see it, the expression is fear, and this expression goes back to the higher centers of the brain, the centers of the brain which think and decide, and gives the experience of fear. The Cannon-Bard theory differed into it. They said it is actually first the emotional experience happens and then the facial expression. So, it is just a matter of looking from what angle, but what is actually happening is largely this, that there is a cognitive process, perceptual process, you perceive something, it reaches to the higher thinking center after a lot of processing, and then there are emotions which get aroused and the other processes which lead to bodily arousal and autonomic. This is another way of looking at the same thing. Autonomic processes are one which are involuntary, like pupillary dilatation, like your goosebumps and salivation, and sometimes you feel butterflies in the tummy, you are sweating. That is all under the control of two systems called sympathetic and parasympathetic, which are under directly control of the emotional centers of the brain. So, there is actually what we are talking about is the same, the cognitive perceptual process. You perceive something, you give a meaning to it, there are emotions and there is a expression of it through the body. Three components remain. In the process, where do you place it depends on. So, these are the type of, again, so you have a certain personality which you are not born with a personality, but you are born with a temperament. So, your genes actually make a temperament, and that temperament gets modulated through epigenetics, through the environment, through whatever type of trauma, toxin, positive influences which have gone in, and that develops into personality by the time you cross your 18, or your mood state is emotional processing. Again, it is the same thing, personality traits, mood state. So, again I am just trying to tell you that you do not have to really bother about which is where. It is not a linear mathematical equation. You should understand that these are the blocks which are happening. What happens first or later is a matter of detailed study, which if you feel like you can always revisit some psychology book. I told you one of them. So, where is it coming from? Are emotions coming from heaven, like the thought? But as I told you, this is a brain structure which has, so we know that brain has two hemispheres. So, you just cut it from between. This is from the inside. So, this is the back of your brain, this is the front of your brain, this is almost within the deeper structure. Now, this deeper structure of the brain, this whole thing can be largely considered as emotional brain, which, and this is a cerebellum, this is a spinal cord, this is pons, medulla and all that, this is medulla, this is pons. These are the areas which control, spinal cord controls the movement of the body under the control of the cerebral hemisphere, the opposite side cerebral hemisphere. So, left controls the movement of the right and right controls the movement of the left. There are deeper structures which control your breathing and your heart rate and your pupillary dilatation, all through the nerves. There are some 12 nerves, cranial nerves, which come out from the brain to cover this area, and there are multiple nerves which come out from the spinal cord to control your body. We all know this is a part of general anatomy. So, motor areas developed first. A snake also moves. Whether a snake can feel emotional is we do not know. A reptile moves. So, animals on the lower hierarchy have movement, but whether they have emotion we do not know. So, emotion probably came later, and so it was a motor area, then this area, and then the neocortex, what we call a neocortex, which is the last to develop. And I am not saying that it has stopped developing, we may be just in the process of developing something more without our awareness. Obviously, we are trying to develop a artificial intelligence, and that is our doing, but that apart. So, this area is the largely the emotional brain, and all these areas, hippocampus, which is also involved in memory formation, amygdala, which has emerged as one of the most important small tiny organ which mediates fear and anger and explosion and all this sudden impulsive thing. Cerebellum is obviously the fine tuning of your body postures and movement and all. Cerebellum was considered to be a part of a part of the brain which controls movement and all, but of late it has also been found to get involved in some of the cognitive, affective states of mind through its feedback, huge feedback loops through the brain. So, this limbic cortex, limbic system is where emotions are generated and processed. Now, this is just a example given by Davis, which how the whole thing happens. These are cortical pathways, this goes from the spinal cord to one of this area amygdala, and there is a whole cycle where there is a startle. So, if something comes which needs a reflex of startle, this is how it will go. Either once you see it or you feel it, it goes to this part of limbic system, which leads to a common pathway finally to the muscle to just withdraw. So, whatever senses it is coming from, if the brain, if the limbic system has processed it and feels that it has to be a withdrawal or a startle, it will follow a common pathway. Again, so these are conditioned fear stimulus, as you say, unconditional. Condition means that maybe a dog has bitten you in the childhood and it was pretty serious injury. As you move on in life, that fear may still be there in your head. So, this is every time you see a dog you get a fear, or there may be a stimulus which you are not, you have never seen, but you may still feel fearful. So, all processes through amygdala, and these are the organs of brain and nerves which amygdala directly affects. So, what happens? Sympathetic activation which leads to tachycardia, faster heart rate, paleness, your pupillary dilatation, as I told you, blood pressure goes high. Parasympathetic, urination, defecation, you can suddenly people pass urine in fear, increase respiration, behavioral and EEG arousal. EEG is the recording of the electrical activity of the brain, and you suddenly become very vigilant. Startle, or it can also, it depends on which amygdala activates which part of these. These are just broad correlation, because when it happens, it is not happening that amygdala and this one part is leading to this action and rest of the brain is going on normally in its daily life. It is not that, it is actually the whole brain gets into it. Your whole, it is not only brain, your whole being gets into it. So, it is your body, actually at the end of the day, end of the state is the body which is feeling it, and this body itself, and you are feeling the fear through whole body. Ask anybody who has had a panic attack and you will know. Mouth open, jaw movements, facial expression of fear. So, all this, they are signs of fear or anxiety which are coming because of amygdala stimulation, depending on what network amygdala is activating. So, essentially we are again talking about the same thing if you look at it. This is the response, this is the underlying emotional thing, and there are areas which get into modifying it, and after you receive this, you again get a sensation of fear, or which your mind, your higher thinking center knows. Again, this is one of the same thing, sensory cortex primary, where all the senses go. Association cortex is where the specialized area of the brain which are having taking sensation actually associated with other inputs. This is thalamus, again which is the coordination center. Essentially, just to tell you the same thing, we will discuss about it in the next lecture, and we will continue talking about emotions. So, just go through the whole thing and try and find out some book, Morgan and King especially, and we will catch up in the next lecture. Thank you.